Jake Morrison stood at the observation window of Unity Station and watched the alien ships approach. They were massive, 3 times larger than any human vessel. Their hulls gleamed with a strange purple light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. After 200 years of searching the stars, humanity had finally found someone else. Or rather, someone else had found them. "They're hailing us again," said Dr. Amy Chen from her console. She was a scientist who studied alien life, though until 3 days ago there had been no alien life to study. Her hands moved quickly across the screens translating the alien signals. Same message. "They want to talk?" Jake nodded and straightened his uniform. He had been a soldier once, fighting in the colony wars on Mars. Now he was Earth's chief ambassador, chosen because he knew how to stay calm under pressure. The weight of representing all humanity pressed on his shoulders like a heavy stone. "Open a channel," Jake said. The main screen flickered to life. The alien that appeared was unlike anything from Earth. Its skin was pale blue and covered in small scales. It had 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern on its face, and its mouth was just a thin line. When it spoke, the translator turned its words into English. "I am Overlord Vex of the Xanther Collective," the alien said. Its voice was cold and flat. "You will listen carefully, humans. We have been watching your species since you first left your home world. You are young and weak. You know nothing of the galaxy." Jake kept his face neutral, though anger stirred in his chest. "I am Ambassador Jake Morrison, representing the United Human Systems. We welcome peaceful contact with the Xanther Collective." Vex made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peace. Yes, we offer you peace. The Xanther Collective includes 12 species across 40 star systems. We maintain order in this region of space. You will join us." Amy leaned closer to Jake and whispered, "This doesn't sound like an invitation." She was right. Jake had heard ultimatums before. This was one. "What would joining the collective require?" he asked. "Simple terms," Vex said. 4 of its eyes blinked one at a time. "You will destroy all weapons on your ships and colonies. You will accept Xanther governors on all human worlds. You will provide 30% of your resources to the collective. You will follow our laws without question. In return, we will allow you to exist." The room fell silent. Jake felt every person on the bridge staring at him, waiting for his response. Back on Earth, billions of people watched this broadcast. On Mars, in the asteroid colonies on the 3 new worlds humanity had just started to settle, everyone was watching. "Those terms are not acceptable," Jake said calmly. "We are willing to discuss trade, cultural exchange, and mutual cooperation, but we will not surrender our sovereignty." All 4 of Vex's eyes focused on Jake with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "You do not understand your position, human. We have 200 warships in this system. You have 30. Our technology is centuries beyond yours. Our collective has never lost a war. You are insects trying to negotiate with giants." Amy pulled up data on her screen and showed it to Jake. The numbers were bad. The Xanther ships were heavily armed. Their shields were stronger than anything humanity had. In a straight fight, Earth would lose. But Jake had learned something in his years as a soldier. The side with bigger guns didn't always win. "We understand our position perfectly," he said. "We also understand yours. You need something from us or you wouldn't be talking. You would have already attacked." For a moment, Vex's scales rippled in a pattern that the translator marked as surprise. Then the alien's face returned to its cold expression. "You are correct. The collective could destroy you, but destruction wastes resources. We prefer to absorb useful species. You have adapted well to different environments. Your scientists show creativity. You could serve the collective well." "Serve," Jake repeated. "You mean as slaves?" "We prefer the term integrated members," Vex said. "Many species have joined us. They live peacefully under our guidance. They are protected, fed, and given purpose. Your alternative is extinction." Admiral Lisa Grant entered the bridge. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had commanded Earth's Space Defense Fleet for 10 years. She walked to Jake's side and looked at the screen. "Admiral," Vex said, "perhaps you understand military reality better than this diplomat. Look at our fleet. Look at your defenses. You cannot win." Lisa smiled, and it was not a friendly smile. "I've been looking at your fleet for 3 days, Overlord. I've been in the military for 35 years. I've studied every war in human history. I've learned one thing. The side that thinks it cannot lose is usually the one that gets surprised." Vex's scales rippled again. "You are brave but foolish. We give you 48 hours to accept our terms. If you refuse, we will demonstrate our power. We will destroy your Mars colony first. Then we will take Earth." The screen went dark. Jake turned to Lisa. "Can we fight them? Honestly? In a straight battle, no. They're right about their technology, but wars aren't just about technology." Lisa pulled up tactical displays. "They have 200 ships, but they're spread across the system. They think they've already won, so they're not in combat formation. They're arrogant." Amy stood up from her console. "I've been analyzing their broadcasts and ship movements. I found something interesting. The Xanthir Collective has records going back 3,000 years. In that time, they've absorbed 47 different species. But here's the thing. Every single species they conquered was pre-spaceflight. They've never fought a war against another spacefaring civilization." Jake felt a cold understanding wash over him. "They're bullies. They only pick fights they know they can win." "Exactly," Amy said. "And there's more. I've been studying their language and behavior. They have no words for guerrilla warfare or insurgency or total war. Their military doctrine is all about overwhelming force and quick surrender. They've never faced an enemy that fights back hard." Lisa grinned, and this time it was genuine. "They think they know us because they've watched us for a few years. They see our small fleet and think we're weak. They have no idea what they're dealing with." "What do you mean?" Jake asked, though he was starting to understand. "They've never read our history," Lisa said. "They don't know about the world wars. They don't know about Vietnam or Afghanistan or the 100 other conflicts where a weaker force bled, a stronger one dry. They don't know that humans have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We're really, really good at war, Jake. We just haven't had anyone else to fight." Amy pulled up more data. "Every colony has been building defenses since we started exploring space. We've been paranoid about alien invasion since before we left Earth. We have weapons they don't know about. We have tactics they've never seen. And we have something else. We have 4 billion people on Earth alone who will never surrender their freedom." Jake thought about his daughter on Earth. She was 12 years old. He thought about her growing up under alien rule, being told what to think and what to do. He thought about humanity's long climb from caves to stars, every generation fighting for survival and freedom. "Contact Earth Command," Jake said. "Tell them to activate Protocol Sentinel." Lisa's eyes widened. "That's total war mobilization. Once we start that, there's no going back." "I know," Jake said. "But they need to understand something about humans. We don't surrender. We don't give up. And if they want to take our freedom, they're going to have to pry it from our cold, dead hands." Over the next 48 hours, every human colony began to transform. Mining stations on asteroids revealed hidden missile batteries. Civilian cargo ships deployed concealed weapon systems. The Mars colony opened massive doors in its surface, showing underground bunkers and launch facilities that had been prepared for decades. On Earth, factories that made civilian goods switched to military production. Scientists who had been working on faster-than-light travel turned their minds to weapons. Every person with military training reported to duty stations. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for this moment, even if they didn't know when it would come. Jake sent one final message to Overlord Vex. "We reject your terms. If you attack us, you will regret it. This is your only warning." Vex's reply was short. "You are fools. You choose death over service. So be it." The Xanthir fleet began to move into attack formation. 200 massive warships advanced toward Earth's orbital defenses. On Unity Station, alarms began to sound. Lisa took command of the defense fleet and her ships moved to intercept. Jake stood at the observation window and watched the enemy fleet approach. Amy stood beside him, her face pale but determined. "Do you think we can win?" she asked quietly. Jake didn't answer right away. He thought about every war humanity had ever fought. He thought about soldiers standing against impossible odds. He thought about the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. "I think they've made a terrible mistake," he finally said. "They think they're declaring war on a weak species. They don't realize they're about to fight the most dangerous predator in the galaxy. Us." The first Xanthir ships entered weapons range. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and the Xanthir Collective was about to learn a very hard. 3 months into the war, the Xanthir Collective sent 500 ships to human space. They were determined to crush humanity's resistance once and for all. What they found was a humanity that had transformed itself into a war machine. Every factory on Earth now produced weapons. Every person who could hold a wrench worked in shipyards. Children too young to fight grew food so adults could focus on the war effort. Humanity had activated something the Xanthir had never seen: total war. Sophie Blake was an engineer on Earth's largest orbital shipyard. Before the war, she had designed civilian cargo vessels. Now she built destroyers and carriers, but her most important work was a new technology she called the Ghost Drive. "It's simple, really," Sophie explained to Admiral Lisa Grant during a video call. "Xanthir sensors look for heat and energy signatures. Our ships burn hot and bright so they see us coming from millions of miles away. But what if we could mask that signature?" Lisa leaned forward with interest. "Can you do that?" "I just did," Sophie said with a tired smile. She had not slept in 36 hours. "The first prototype is ready. The Ghost Drive creates a field that makes our ships look like space debris or empty rocks. We can get right up next to them before they know we're there. How many can you build? Give me 2 months and every resource I need, and I can outfit the entire fleet." Lisa did not hesitate. "You have it. Whatever you need." While Sophie worked on the Ghost Drive, Commander Alex Zhang was leading an operation in the outer solar system. Alex had been a mining ship captain before the war. He knew every asteroid, every ice chunk, every piece of floating rock in the belt beyond Jupiter. When the war started, Alex had volunteered immediately. He brought with him 200 mining ships and their crews. These were not military vessels. They were slow, ugly, and covered in industrial equipment. But Alex had an idea. "Mining ships are built to crack open asteroids," he explained to his captains in a secured channel. "We have drills that can punch through solid rock. We have charges that can split mountains. The Xanthir see us as civilians. Let's use that." The Xanthir supply line ran through the outer system past Jupiter's moons. Every day, cargo ships brought ammunition, fuel, and supplies from the collective's territories to feed their war fleet. The route was lightly guarded because the Xanthir did not think humanity could threaten it. Alex proved them wrong. His fleet of mining ships hid among the asteroids, their engines powered down to minimal levels. To Xanthir sensors, they looked like just more rocks floating in space. When the supply convoy passed through, Alex gave the order. 200 mining ships activated at once. They emerged from the asteroid field and surrounded the Xanthir convoy. The aliens tried to respond, but mining ships were built tough. They had armor designed to survive impacts with space debris. Xanthir weapons damaged them but did not destroy them quickly enough. Alex's ships closed in and used their industrial tools as weapons. Mining drills tore through alien hulls. Explosive charges meant for asteroids blew apart supply ships. In 30 minutes, the entire convoy was destroyed. "All ships back into the belt," Alex ordered. "Let's vanish before their warships arrive." The mining fleet scattered into the asteroid field. When Xanthir military ships arrived 10 minutes later, they found only debris and the empty void of space. The miners were gone. This attack became the pattern for human tactics. Hit fast, hit hard, and disappear before the enemy could respond. The Xanthir called it cowardly. The humans called it smart. On Earth, General Greg Palmer coordinated the global war effort. He was a serious man with gray hair and a face lined with worry. Every day he had to make decisions that would affect millions of lives. Every day he chose to keep fighting. "General, we've converted 80% of civilian manufacturing to military production," his aide reported. "But people are starting to feel the strain. Food is rationed. Power is limited. There are protests in some cities." Greg nodded. He had expected this. "War is hard. People suffer. But freedom is worth the sacrifice. Make sure everyone understands what surrender would mean. Slavery, occupation, the end of human independence. We fight or we die." But Greg was also making another decision, one that would shock the galaxy. He authorized a psychological warfare campaign designed by Dr. Amy Chen. Amy had studied the Xanthir carefully. She understood their weakness now. They had never faced real opposition. They had never experienced the horror of total war. So she decided to show them what humanity was capable of. "We're going to broadcast our history," Amy explained to Jake. "Every war, every battle, every terrible thing humans have done to each other. We're going to make sure every species in the collective sees it." "Why?" Jake asked. "Won't that make us look like monsters?" "Exactly," Amy said. "The Xanthir think they're scary. They think they're the predators. We need to show them what real predators look like." The broadcasts began. Amy's team sent recordings across every frequency the collective used. The transmissions showed the world wars, the ancient conquests, the centuries of human conflict. They showed cities burning, armies clashing, and the terrible things humans had done in the name of survival and victory. The effect was immediate and shocking. The Xanthir Collective was a union of 12 species, most of whom had been absorbed peacefully or after brief conflicts. These species had never seen war like humans waged it. They watched the broadcasts with growing horror. On the collective council, representatives from the member species began to question the war. A delegate from the Krillin species, a race of peaceful traders, stood up during an emergency session. "We joined the collective for protection and prosperity," the Krillin delegate said. "But the humans are not like other species you've conquered. They will never surrender. I've watched their history. They fought each other for thousands of years. They burned their own cities. They killed billions of their own kind. And now we're fighting them. This is madness." 3 species withdrew from the collective that week. They sent messages to Earth asking for peace. Jake accepted immediately and offered them protection from Xanthir retaliation. The war was changing. Humanity was no longer just defending. They were attacking, disrupting, and terrifying their enemies. The Xanthir fleet, which had numbered 500 ships, was down to 300. Human losses were heavy too, but not as heavy as they should have been. On the carrier Thunderbolt, Captain Claire Williams led a strike force deep into contested space. Her mission was to attack a Xanthir outpost that supplied the forward fleet. The outpost was heavily defended, surrounded by minefields and defensive platforms. Claire used Sophie's new Ghost Drive technology. Her ships approached the outpost while masked, looking like empty space on Xanthir sensors. They got within weapons range before the aliens realized they were there. "All ships fire at will," Claire commanded. The human fleet dropped their stealth fields and unleashed everything they had. Missiles, railgun shots, and energy weapons tore into the surprised defenders. The Xanthir scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The outpost's shields collapsed under the assault. Its weapons platforms exploded one by one. In 20 minutes, the battle was over. The outpost was destroyed. Claire's fleet jumped away before Xanthir reinforcements could arrive. These victories were adding up. The Xanthir were losing ships, supplies, and most importantly, they were losing confidence. Their member species were abandoning the collective. Their military could not adapt to human tactics. Their certainty of victory was crumbling. Overlord Vex sat in his command chamber and stared at the reports. 5 more species had left the collective. His fleet was down to 250 ships. The humans had destroyed 3 major supply depots and raided a dozen minor ones. His officers were demoralized and confused. "How are they doing this?" Vex demanded. "They are outnumbered. Our technology is superior. We should be winning." His tactical officer, a younger Xanthir named Krell, spoke carefully. "Overlord, the humans fight differently than any opponent we've faced. They don't engage in direct battles unless they have an advantage. They attack our weak points. They use deception and surprise. Their entire society has mobilized for war. Every human, from children to the elderly, contributes to their war effort. They're primitives," Vex shouted. "They barely have faster-than-light travel. They have no experience with galactic politics. But they have 10,000 years of experience with war," Krell said quietly. "Against each other. They've practiced warfare for their entire history. We've studied their records. They fought more wars in a single century than the collective has fought in 3,000 years. Vex wanted to argue, but he could not. The evidence was clear. Humanity was winning because humanity was better at fighting. It was a bitter truth to accept. "What do you recommend?" Vex asked finally. "Negotiate," Krell said. "Offer them peace with honor. Recognize their sovereignty. Pull back our fleet before we lose it entirely." Vex's scales turned dark purple. "The Council will never agree. We've never negotiated with a species we tried to conquer. It would make us look weak." "We already look weak," Krell replied. 3 species have left the collective. 5 more are considering it. If we continue this war, the collective itself might collapse. Before Vex could respond, an urgent message came through. "Another!" The first Xanthir missile struck Unity Station's shield at exactly 0600 hours Earth time. The shield held, but barely. Alarms screamed through every corridor as the station shuddered from the impact. Jake grabbed a support rail to keep from falling. Through the observation window, he saw more missiles streaking through space like angry fireflies. "All stations are taking fire," Lisa announced from the command center. Her voice was calm despite the chaos around her. Initiating defensive response. What happened next would become legend in human military history. Every human ship, station, and colony opened fire at once. The Xanthir had expected a desperate, disorganized defense. What they got was a coordinated assault that had been planned for decades. Hidden weapons platforms that had been disguised as communication satellites came to life. Missiles launched from asteroids that the Xanthir had dismissed as lifeless rocks. The human defense fleet, which Vex had called pathetic, split into dozens of small groups and attacked from every direction at once. Captain Megan Price commanded the destroyer Defiant. Her ship was small compared to the Xanthir vessels, but she had studied every recording of their ships for 3 days straight. She knew their weaknesses. All power to forward shields, Megan ordered. Attack pattern Sierra 7. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. The Defiant accelerated straight toward a Xanthir cruiser 3 times its size. The alien ship fired, but Megan had already calculated the timing. Her ship rolled at the last second and the Xanthir weapons hit empty space. Now, Megan shouted. The Defiant fired all its missiles into a single weak point on the Xanthir ship's hull, a spot where their shield generators created a tiny gap. The human weapons tore through the alien armor. The massive cruiser shuddered, then exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space. Megan's crew cheered, but she silenced them quickly. That's one down. They have 199 more. Stay focused. On Mars, Commander Ryan Torres watched the battle reports come in from Earth orbit. The Red Planet's Defense Command Center was buried half a mile underground, protected by rock and reinforced steel. Ryan had spent 5 years preparing Mars for this exact scenario. Sir, we have incoming, his tactical officer called out. 20 Xanthir ships breaking from the main fleet. They're heading straight for us, Ryan smiled grimly. The Xanthir were following their standard doctrine. Split the enemy forces, destroy them piece by piece. They thought Mars was an easy target, far from Earth's defenses. They were wrong. Open the doors, Ryan commanded. Across the surface of Mars, enormous metal plates began to slide open. They had been built into the planet's surface and covered with red dust to hide them. Beneath each door was a missile silo containing weapons that Earth's best engineers had spent years perfecting. The Xanthir ships entered Mars orbit, their weapons charging to destroy the human colony. They never got the chance. 200 missiles launched from the surface at once, filling the space around Mars with fire and fury. The Xanthir ships tried to dodge, but they were built for power, not agility. Human missiles, smaller and faster, swarmed around them like angry bees. One by one, the alien ships fell. Some exploded. Others lost power and drifted helplessly. A few tried to retreat, but the missiles followed them relentlessly. In 15 minutes, all 20 Xanthir ships were destroyed or disabled. Mars colony had not lost a single defensive position. Ryan opened a channel to Earth. Mars defense to command. All hostiles eliminated. 0 friendly casualties. We're ready for round 2. On Unity Station, Amy monitored communications from the Xanthir fleet. What she heard made her smile despite the danger. The aliens were panicking. Jake, listen to this, she said, playing a recorded transmission. The translator turned the alien language into English, but the fear in the voice was clear. This is impossible. They have weapons everywhere. They're using tactics we've never seen. Request immediate reinforcements. They're scared, Jake said, surprised. They came here expecting an easy victory. They still don't understand, Amy replied. They think we're just lucky or that they underestimated our technology. They don't realize that warfare is our specialty. We've been doing this to each other for thousands of years. Another message came through, this one from Overlord Vex himself. All ships maintain formation. These humans are primitives with primitive weapons. We have superior numbers and technology. Continue the attack. But the Xanthir formation was already breaking apart. Human ships darted between the larger alien vessels, firing at close range where the Xanthir's big guns couldn't track them. It was like watching wolves hunt buffalo, Amy thought. The buffalo were bigger and stronger, but the wolves were smarter and more vicious. Lieutenant Ben Harris flew his fighter through a gap between 2 Xanthir battleships. His small craft was tiny compared to the massive alien vessels, barely larger than an old Earth truck. But what it lacked in size, it made up for in speed and maneuverability. Razor Squad on me, Ben called to his wing. Let's show these aliens how humans fight. His squadron of 12 fighters attacked a Xanthir carrier that was launching its own combat craft. The alien fighters were sleek and fast, but they flew in rigid formations. They followed predictable patterns. Human pilots had learned centuries ago that predictable meant dead. Ben and his squad broke formation immediately, each pilot moving independently but working together. They wove through the alien fighters like dancers, their weapons finding targets with deadly accuracy. The Xanthir pilots tried to adapt, but they had been trained for combat against opponents who followed rules and formations. Human pilots followed one rule: survive and win. Nothing else mattered. In 5 minutes, Ben's squadron had destroyed 30 alien fighters and crippled the carrier. Ben had a burn mark on his ship's hull and had lost one pilot, but they had proven something important. Humans were better at dogfighting. "Command, this is Razor Leader," Ben reported. "Enemy fighters are no match for us. Recommend we deploy all fighter wings." Lisa made the call immediately. Every human carrier and station launched its fighters. Hundreds of small craft swarmed into space, overwhelming the Xanthir defensive screens. The aliens had never seen this tactic because they had never fought anyone who used it. As the first day of battle ended, the Xanthir had lost 40 ships. Humanity had lost 7. The numbers should have been reversed. The Xanthir had better technology, bigger ships, and more firepower, but they didn't have humanity's experience with war. Overlord Vex stared at the battle reports on his command ship. Around him, his officers stood in stunned silence. This was not supposed to happen. The collective had conquered 47 species. Every time the pattern was the same: show overwhelming force, demand surrender, and accept submission. Usually, the conquered species gave up after the first battle if they fought at all. But these humans were different. They fought with a ferocity that shocked him. They used tactics that seemed random but were devastatingly effective. They turned every piece of space debris, every asteroid, every satellite into a weapon. They were winning. "Send a message to the Collective Council," Vex ordered. "Request reinforcements. All available ships." His second-in-command, a veteran of 20 campaigns, spoke carefully. "Overlord, perhaps we should negotiate. We could offer better terms. The humans are proving to be difficult opponents." Vex's scales flushed dark purple with anger. "We do not negotiate with primitives. We do not retreat. Send the message." On Unity Station, Jake received a transmission from Earth. It was the World Council, the governing body of all human settlements. The chairwoman, an elderly woman named Helen Foster, appeared on his screen. Behind her, Jake could see the flags of every nation on Earth. "Ambassador Morrison," Helen said formally, "the Council has reviewed the battle reports. We are impressed with our force's performance. However, we face a decision. The Xanthir will likely send more ships. This war could last years and cost millions of lives. Some council members suggest we should negotiate before this gets worse." Jake understood the weight of what she was asking. Continue fighting and humanity might be destroyed. Surrender and humanity would lose its freedom. Both choices were terrible. "Madam Chairwoman," Jake said slowly, "I understand the concern, but I've learned something today. The Xanthir have never fought a real war. They've bullied pre-spaceflight species. We're the first civilization that's fought back hard. They don't know what to do with that." "What are you suggesting?" Helen asked. "I'm suggesting that we're scarier than they are. We just don't know it yet." Jake pulled up the battle statistics. "Look at the numbers. We should have lost today. By every logical measure, we should be begging for mercy, but we're not. We're winning. And the reason is simple: we're better at war than they are." Helen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was firm. "Then we continue fighting. Tell Admiral Grant she has full authorization to use any means necessary to defend humanity. And Jake, send a message to Overlord Vex. Make sure he understands what he's gotten himself into." Jake composed the message carefully. He wanted it to be clear and unmistakable. When he was satisfied, he sent it directly to the Xanthir flagship. The message was simple. "Overlord Vex, you demanded our surrender. You threatened our families. You attacked our homes. You thought we..." 6 months after the war began, humanity did something the Xanthir Collective never expected. They attacked. Admiral Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of her flagship, the carrier Independence, and looked at the tactical display. Before her stretched a map of Xanthir space, showing dozens of star systems under collective control. Her fleet of 120 ships was ready to jump into enemy territory. "All captains report ready," her communications officer announced. Lisa took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define the war. For 6 months, humanity had defended its territory. Now they would carry the fight to the enemy. She activated the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Grant. Today we begin Operation Hammer. We're not just defending our homes anymore. We're going to show the collective that humanity will not be bullied. We're going to free the species they've enslaved. And we're going to prove that we can fight anywhere, anytime. All ships jump on my mark." The fleet disappeared in flashes of light as they entered faster than light travel. When they emerged, they were deep in Xanthir territory, near a colony world called Krios 4. Krios 4 was home to the Krios people, a species that had been absorbed by the collective 70 years ago. According to intelligence reports, the Krios had resisted at first but were crushed quickly. Now they lived under Xanthir occupation, their resources taken, their freedom gone. Captain Claire Williams led the assault force toward the planet. Her carrier group included 30 ships, enough to overwhelm the modest defense fleet stationed there. The Xanthir defenders were shocked to see human ships so far from Earth. They scrambled to respond, but Claire's forces were ready. "Ghost drive on my mark," Claire ordered. 3, 2, 1 mark. Her entire fleet vanished from Xanthir sensors. The aliens panicked, firing at empty space, trying to find an enemy they could not see. When Claire's ships dropped their stealth fields, they were already in attack position. The battle was short and brutal. Human ships had been upgraded with the latest weapons and tactics. They moved like sharks through water, fast and deadly. In 40 minutes, every Xanthir ship above Krios 4 was destroyed or fleeing. Then Lieutenant Daniel Shaw and his Marines did something extraordinary. They went to the surface. Daniel was a combat veteran who had trained for years in ground assault operations. His unit of 200 Marines dropped from orbit in armored pods, landing near the capital city of Krios 4. The Xanthir occupation forces numbered about 500 soldiers. They were garrison troops, used to keeping order on a peaceful world. They had never fought Marines. Daniel's team moved through the city with precision. They wore armor that could withstand small arms fire. They carried weapons that could punch through walls. And they had trained for urban combat since they were recruits. "Remember, we're here to liberate, not conquer," Daniel reminded his troops over the radio. "The Krios are friendlies. Only engage Xanthir forces." The battle for the capital lasted 6 hours. The Xanthir troops tried to set up defensive positions, but the Marines flanked them, surrounded them, and forced them to surrender. When it was over, every Xanthir soldier on the planet was either captured or had fled. Daniel met with the Krios leadership in their old government building. The Krios were tall, thin beings with green skin and large eyes. Their leader, a female named Vila, looked at Daniel with a mixture of hope and fear. "Who are you?" Vila asked through a translator device. "We're humans from Earth," Daniel explained. "We're at war with the Xanthir collective. We're here to free you." Vila's eyes widened. "Free us?" "The collective told us you were primitives, barely capable of spaceflight. They said you would be destroyed in days." Daniel smiled grimly. "The collective was wrong about a lot of things. We're offering you a choice. Join us in fighting the collective, stay neutral, or we can help you defend yourselves. But you're free now. What the Xanthir did to you, the occupation, the resource extraction, all of that ends today." Vila began to cry. Other Krios officials joined her. 70 years of oppression was ending. They had never thought they would see this day. "Tell us everything you know about the collective," Daniel said gently. "Every weakness, every supply route, every hidden facility. Help us free the others." Vila nodded and began to share information. The Krios had been forced to serve the collective for decades. They knew things the Xanthir thought were secret. They knew which species were unhappy with their membership. They knew where supplies were stored. They knew how the collective maintained control. This intelligence was priceless. Amy Chen, working from Unity Station, analyzed every piece of information the Krios provided. She built a complete picture of how the collective operated. She found weaknesses that humanity could exploit. "Jake, look at this," Amy said during their daily briefing. "The collective is held together by fear and the promise of protection. But 5 species have already left. If we can liberate a few more, the entire structure could collapse." "How many species are we talking about?" Jake asked. "There were 12 in the collective when this started. 5 have left. That leaves 7, including the Xanthir themselves. If we can free 3 more, the collective will be too weak to continue the war." Jake made a decision. "Share this with Admiral Grant. Tell her to expand Operation Hammer. We're not just fighting to defend Earth anymore. We're fighting to dismantle the collective entirely. Over the next 3 months, human forces struck at collective holdings across 20 star systems. They freed the Milos people from their orbital workstations. They liberated the Draxan colony that had been strip-mined for resources. They helped the Tarkin species overthrow their Xanthir governors in a coordinated uprising. Each victory brought more intelligence and more allies. The freed species joined humanity in a new alliance. They called it the Free Alliance, a coalition dedicated to mutual defense and freedom from oppression. Captain Claire Williams became known as the Liberator. She led assault after assault, freeing colony after colony. Her crews worked day and night, jumping from system to system, never giving the Xanthir time to respond effectively. Back in Xanthir space, Overlord Vex was watching his entire strategy collapse. The collective that had taken 3,000 years to build was falling apart in less than a year. He had started this war with 12 member species and 500 ships. Now he had 4 species and fewer than 150 ships. His officers were demoralized. His troops were exhausted. And worst of all, he could not stop the humans. Every time he sent forces to defend a world, the humans attacked somewhere else. Every time he thought he had them cornered, they vanished using their ghost drive technology. They were everywhere and nowhere, striking without warning and disappearing before he could respond. "We need to end this," his second-in-command Krell said during a private meeting. "The Council is considering negotiating with the humans." "Never," Vex said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then we need to strike at Earth itself," Krell argued. "One massive assault. Commit everything we have. If we can destroy Earth, the human forces will collapse." Vex considered this. It was risky, but it might be their only chance. If they could eliminate humanity's homeworld, the scattered human fleets would have no base to return to. They would eventually run out of supplies and be forced to surrender. "Gather the fleet," Vex ordered. "Every ship we have. We attack Earth in 1 month." But the Xanthir did not realize that humanity had allies now. The Krios, grateful for their liberation, sent a warning to Earth. The message was simple. The Xanthir were planning a final assault. Lisa Grant received the warning and smiled. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. The Xanthir were going to commit all their remaining forces to one battle. If humanity could win that battle, the war would be over. "Contact all our ships," Lisa ordered. "Pull back every fleet. I want every human warship defending Earth. This is where we end it." Jake sent a message to all the Free Alliance members. "The Xanthir are coming to Earth in force. We could use your help." The response was overwhelming. The Krios sent their small defense fleet. The Milos provided supply ships. The Draxan offered intelligence about Xanthir tactics. Even species that had been neutral sent messages of support. Ambassador Kate Sullivan, who had been working with the freed species, reported to Jake with tears in her eyes. "They're calling us heroes. They're saying humanity is the first species strong enough to stand up to the collective. They want to help us finish this." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders again. Billions of humans and aliens were depending on the outcome of the coming battle. If they lost, everyone who had opposed the collective would suffer. But if they won, the galaxy would be changed forever. The collective would be broken. The enslaved would be free, and humanity would have proven that freedom was worth fighting for. On Unity Station, Jake stood at the observation window and watched ships arrive from across human space. The fleet grew day by day. Destroyers, carriers, cruisers, and even converted civilian ships. Every vessel that could fight was coming home to defend Earth. Amy joined him at the window. "The Xanthir are bringing about 80 ships," she said. "We'll have over 300. "Numbers won't matter if they fight smart," Jake replied. "They won't," Amy said confidently. "They've never fought smart. Vex was brought aboard Admiral Grant's flagship under guard. He expected to be executed or imprisoned in terrible conditions. Instead, Lisa Grant treated him with respect. She sat across from him in a conference room and offered him water. "Why?" Vex asked. "We tried to destroy you. We killed thousands of your people. Why treat me with honor?" "Because we're not savages," Lisa replied. "Yes, we're good at war. We've had to be. But we also have rules. Prisoners are treated fairly. Surrendered enemies are respected. That's what separates us from people who use war as a tool of oppression." Vex was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had haunted him for months. "How did you do it? You should have lost. Our technology was better. Our fleet was larger. We had experience conquering other species. How did humans win?" Lisa considered her answer carefully. You conquered species that couldn't fight back. You bullied the weak. You never faced anyone who fought back hard. But humans, we've been fighting each other for 10,000 years. Every tactic you have, we've seen before. Every strategy we've countered before. Not because we wanted to be warriors, but because we had to be survivors. So we never had a chance, Vex said. You had a chance, Lisa corrected. Before you attacked, you could have offered real partnership, real cooperation. Instead, you demanded surrender. You threatened our families. You made us choose between freedom and survival. And when humans face that choice, we always choose freedom. In the weeks following the battle, the galaxy changed dramatically. The Xanthir Collective officially dissolved. The remaining member species declared independence. Earth became the center of a new organization called the Free Alliance, a coalition of species dedicated to mutual defense and freedom. Jake Morrison was elected as the first Secretary General of the Free Alliance. It was a role he never wanted, but someone had to do it. His first act was to establish the Institute for Interspecies Understanding, with Dr. Amy Chen as its director. We can't let this happen again, Amy explained during the Institute's opening ceremony. The collective fell apart because different species didn't understand each other. We're going to make sure that understanding happens. We'll study cultures, teach languages, and build bridges between species. The cost of the war was heavy. 800,000 humans had died. Dozens of cities on Earth and the colonies were damaged. The economy had been devastated by the total war mobilization. But humanity had survived, and more importantly, the Xanthir fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system on a cold morning in December, 1 year after the war began. 80 warships, the last remnants of what had once been a force of 500. They were battered, their crews exhausted, but they were determined to end this war with one final strike. Overlord Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the blue and white planet ahead. Earth, the home of the species that had destroyed his collective, humiliated his forces, and taught him what real war looked like. If he could destroy this world, the humans would break. He was sure of it. All ships advance in formation, Vex commanded. Target all orbital stations and defense platforms. Once they're destroyed, we bombard the surface. The Xanthir fleet moved forward, confident despite their losses. 80 ships were still a formidable force. They had powerful weapons and strong shields. Vex allowed himself a moment of hope. Perhaps they could still win this. Then the human fleet appeared. Admiral Lisa Grant had positioned her forces near Neptune, the solar system's outermost planet. When the Xanthir entered the system, she gave the order to intercept. 300 human ships emerged from hiding spots behind moons and asteroid fields, and within the orbits of the gas giants. Vex stared at his display screen in disbelief. 300 ships. The humans had somehow built or gathered 300 warships in 1 year. It was impossible. No species could mobilize that quickly, but humanity had. Every shipyard on Earth, Mars, and the colonies had worked non-stop. Civilian ships had been converted to military use. Allies from the Free Alliance had sent their vessels. The fleet facing Vex was the largest fighting force humanity had ever assembled. All ships defensive formation, Vex ordered, his voice tight with stress. We can still win this. Focus fire and break through their lines. The Battle of Earth began near Neptune, far from the planet the Xanthir wanted to destroy. Lisa had planned it that way. She wanted to stop them as far from Earth as possible. If any Xanthir ships broke through, there were more layers of defense waiting. Captain Megan Price commanded a squadron of 30 destroyers. She had recovered from injuries sustained in earlier battles and requested to be on the front line for this final fight. Her ships moved in perfect coordination, weaving through space like a school of fish. Ghost drive on, Megan ordered. Let's show them what we've learned. Her squadron vanished from Xanthir sensors. They circled around the enemy formation, moving into attack position. When they dropped their stealth fields, they were behind the Xanthir lines, firing into the vulnerable rear sections of the alien ships. The Xanthir tried to turn to face this new threat, but that's exactly what Megan wanted. While they were distracted, another human squadron attacked from a different angle, then another. The humans attacked from all directions at once, never giving the Xanthir a chance to form a solid defense. Lieutenant Ben Harris led his fighter squadron straight into the heart of the Xanthir formation. His pilots had practiced this maneuver for months, a high-speed run through enemy lines, firing at close range, then breaking away before the big ships could target them. "Razor Squadron. With me," Ben called over the radio. "Let's make every shot count." His 12 fighters screamed through space, dodging Xanthir fire. They targeted engines, weapon systems, and shield generators. Each fighter made its own decisions about targets and tactics, but they all worked toward the same goal: disable as many enemy ships as possible. The Xanthir had never faced anything like this coordinated chaos. Their rigid tactical doctrine had no answer for an enemy that attacked from everywhere using unpredictable methods. Their communication channels filled with confused reports and desperate calls for orders. Overlord Vex tried to maintain control, but the battle was slipping away from him. His ships were being picked apart one by one. Human vessels surrounded isolated Xanthir ships and overwhelmed them with concentrated fire. It was like watching a pack of wolves hunt, Vex thought bitterly. "Overlord, we've lost 20 ships," Krell reported. "The humans are using tactics we've never encountered. They're treating this battle like a hunt, not a military engagement." "Because that's what they are," Vex said quietly, finally understanding. "They're not soldiers following orders. They're predators following instinct. We never had a chance." Captain Claire Williams commanded the carrier group Thunderbolt in the thick of the fighting. Her ships had been at the front of every major battle. Her crews were veterans now, hardened by months of combat. They knew the Xanthir tactics inside and out. "All fighters launch," Claire ordered. "Target their flagship. If we take out Vex, the rest will lose coordination." 200 fighters poured out of her carriers and raced toward Vex's command ship. The Xanthir flagship was heavily defended, surrounded by escort vessels. But the human pilots had trained for this moment. They split into small groups, each taking a different approach vector. Some fighters drew the defenders' fire while others slipped through the gaps. It was a sacrifice play and everyone knew it. Some pilots would not make it back, but they flew anyway because that's what humanity did. They fought for each other, even when it meant putting themselves in danger. Vex watched the fighters approach and knew his ship was doomed. His shields were already weakened from earlier attacks. His weapons could not track the small, fast human craft. He had lost this battle, lost this war, lost everything. "Prepare to evacuate," Vex ordered. "All senior staff to the escape pods." But before he could abandon ship, a transmission came through on all channels. It was Admiral Lisa Grant. "Overlord Vex, this is Admiral Grant of the United Human Systems. Your fleet is surrounded and outgunned. You've lost 25 ships and the rest are heavily damaged. I'm offering you a chance to surrender. Order your forces to stand down, and we'll accept your surrender with honor. Your crews will be treated fairly under the rules of war. You have 2 minutes to respond." Vex looked around his bridge. His officers were wounded, tired, and defeated. Some were injured from earlier battles. All of them looked at him, waiting for orders. He could order them to fight to the death. They would obey. That's what Xanthir warriors did. But what would be the point? They would all die, and it would not change the outcome. The humans had won. They had proven themselves superior in every aspect of warfare. Continuing to fight would just be throwing away lives for pride. Vex made the hardest decision of his life. "All Xanthir ships cease fire. We surrender." The words tasted like poison in his mouth, but he said them anyway. Across the battlefield, Xanthir ships powered down their weapons. Some captains refused and tried to keep fighting, but human forces disabled them quickly. In 30 minutes, the Battle of Earth was over. The final count was devastating for the Xanthir. They had lost 40 ships destroyed and another 30 captured. Only 10 ships escaped to jump away to safety. The Xanthir Collective, which had existed for 3,000 years, was finished.